Good morning. How are you? Right. So, I am Kevin Wayne Brown, born and reared in Hammond, Louisiana. Right. Moved to Wisconsin in 1993, and while we're at it, we moved to Wisconsin in 1993 to take on my first teaching or my second teaching position, but I must back up. I graduated from Grambling State University. Right. There, pledged Kappa Alpha Psi till the day I die. Know what? No gang banging. That was on TV this weekend, right? Nevertheless, you got it, right? I'll get there, but I wanted to start off with this here slide here because this slide here is my grandparents' first home. Their first home that they purchased. And we can see that in their first home that they purchased, that there were already concerns with the home. But nevertheless, this was their first home, and this is where they started their life, their marriage, to bring up a family. And this is in Louisiana in the 30s, you know. But my grandparents knew and understood the value of education, despite poverty. It's not poverty, right? We know more about poverty than we know anything else. So it's not poverty. But this is my grandma Viola and my grandfather Charlie Sims, right? Who insisted I be a farmer, but I ran from him. But my grandma Viola, who passed in November of 2015, not before I graduated with my doctorate degree, but my grandmother is the one who taught me how to read, who taught my siblings how to read. And what she would do was put up 3-letter words throughout the entire house. Boy, dog, cat, ran, tongue. She wanted to be a school teacher, but she was born in Mississippi in 1915. So the chances of her becoming a school teacher in 1915 in Magnolia, Mississippi was very, very slim. Nevertheless, she taught Kevin Wayne how to read, right? So she would take those 3-letter words and she will take them down and put them in a sentence. The boy ran. The boy jumped. And she would just over and over and over and over. See Tom run way before I went to first grade, right? But my grandmother Viola, as a result of what she did for me, my 2 boys, Jabari in the orange shirt, and Quentin had the opportunity to see me graduate a couple times from college. And this is my wife, LaTanya Brown, for 22 years. You can get my book out of Barnes & Nobles, right? So, 22 years, right? I never thought that sitting in the parking lot of Kmart would be beneficial to my marriage. But it works, guys. All right, let you get that. All right, but 22 years of marriage, right? And my wife is a project manager for IBM, and this is my family. Whoa. The title of my presentation is consistent with your vision and mission statement. It is consistent with the things that Dr. Rodriguez mentioned earlier. The world is flat. The world is flat, after all. It's not round. Education is important. Thomas Jefferson. So my objectives for today, comparing empathy and sympathy. Empathy and sympathy, they are different. However, we're going to focus on empathy, but yet sympathy has its place, but not when we're dealing with our children all the time. to provide evidence of what works best, to become the best school district, is what Dr. Rodriguez said. Many people say to become the best school district or to prepare students to compete on the global stage. Everybody has that, right, throughout the country. But yet, are we really working hard to ensure that that becomes reality? We must, as he stated, Dr. Rodriguez, to provide evidence on globalization impacts on school and why the world is flat, and to make the case that when we consider curriculum, instruction, and assessment, the human, not the assessment, the human, not the words on the paper or the standards, the human, the instructor is the most important. It is the human that progress monitors. It is the human that understands students' strengths and weaknesses. It is the teacher that understands or narrow the standards, right? The adult. Very, very important. But I must admit, when preparing for my presentation, I wanted to make it look nice. I was looking for pictures, positive pictures about professional development and staff meetings. And I was all on Google Images, and I couldn't find anything to represent something positive. But it was easy for me to find things like this. Do you have these moments? This is actually true? Wow. Did you do that to me? Did you? I have 72 slides, right? I thought this was funny, people were thinking about Chicago public schools. Well, let's look at this. Staff meetings. Ain't nobody got time for that. Do we really feel that way? Sometimes, I feel you. I thought this was cute from 1960s or whatever, you know. Students walking past, the teacher lying at the bottom and said, I had no idea that aspirin came in such large bottles. This is the one. I thought this was funny. I didn't want to put it up here, but once I saw at the bottom how Chicago got it wrong, how Chicago got it wrong, you know, I said, I got to roll with this, right? All right, nobody here from Chicago, but who cares? I got my Catholic brothers in here, right? All right. Is this true? You have these? Do you? You want to point out somebody? No. We're going to go with Dr. Rodriguez, right? Right. All right. I saw this too, right? And I thought this was funny before I move into my presentation, but let's check this out. It's right, only 2 minutes long here. Did you go through this? Are you feeling this way?
It's mid-August.
Bobby.
Every town in America. Oh no, it's back. Summer is ending.
It was like totally uncharted territory.
Totally uncharted.
Assistant principal. Let's walk through. Making data-driven decisions will affect your PDAS evaluation. Why aren't your elves clearly posted? of those lesson plans. Make sure to have them on some college ruled paper for me.
Late August. The days they come back. Data. Oh, data. Come on, give me that data.
It's not me, player. All right. The fact is, when you see a great teacher, you are seeing a work of art, right? Truly mean that. Well, this morning, Dr. Rodriguez talked about the vision, mission, and the learning organization. But I'm not going to spend a great deal of time talking about Peter Singay, but he's one of my favorites. But I am going to focus on personal mastery and team learning. It's very, very important when we're talking about a learning organization. So what is personal mastery? Personal mastery, and consider our population. Personal mastery. Consider our students who come to us. And it's imperative that we never arrive, that we're always thirsty, that we're always developing strategies to put in our toolbox for the purpose of working with our students who come to us. We have students that come to us from various backgrounds, so we have to make sure that we're doing the very best for our students, because after all, right, we have already established that students are not just competing with people who they graduated with. The world is flat. And also, in the green, a learning organization such as you or we encourages and facilitates learning at all levels so that it may transform and adapt in an ever-changing, dynamic world, right? Can't just shoot from the hip. Can't just shoot from the hip. And I remember that when I was completed my doctorate, my first master's in Dr. Ronnie Davis, and I was defending my thesis. He said, no, Kevin, you're not ready. I don't care that you send out invitations, but we're not going to allow you to graduate because you said, I think or I feel too many times. Who cares what you think? Who cares how you feel, right? One more semester, but it didn't happen again. I'm not upset. All right. I was. All right. But in order to work with students, I'm going to talk about Hattie, and he speaks a great deal about relationships and effect sizes. It is not a cliche. Relationships are imperative, essential, necessary in order for students to give us the outcomes that we desire, right? So we must have strong relationships. When we talk about effect size, with the minimum effect size being a 0.4, relationships is a 0.72. Very, very important. Very high. It matters. It's not a cliche. We must develop relationships, establish relationships with our students and families and parents. Whenever we do not, the kids know. And we're going to talk about that term known as teacher credibility. Relationships. Empathy. I like the way Cassandra Brown describes empathy. Cassandra Brown is a professor at the University of Houston, and she spent at least 15 years talking about topics such as courage, shame, vulnerability, and empathy. How does she describe empathy? Empathy is important for our students because when we look at this slide, since 2014, there are more students of color in public school than there are from the majority group. Thank you so much. Since 2014, here we are approaching 2018. Why do I point this out? Because of color. We do know that when we're looking at our population, that many of our students of color are dealing with achievement gaps, opportunity gaps. So our jobs are even more dire, important, to make sure that we are doing the very best that we can to enhance all of our students. When we talk about empathy, there are 4 qualities. Perspective taking, don't judge, recognizing emotion in others, and feeling with people.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Thank you. You can identify with that. When we look at the video that Dr. Rodriguez showed earlier with the students and the teachers and our grandparents. All right, so that also leads me to why it's so important, because I decided to look up some information about the jobs in the Chicago surrounding area. And the reason why, because, you know, my research is around college and career readiness, and we're always talking about STEM jobs. But when we look just in our surrounding area, I was trying to measure how much education is needed for our students in order to be productive and reflective citizens, right? And if they were to stay in this area, and you can see the top 5, the top 10 requires some type of post-secondary education. Post-secondary. I didn't say a college degree. Post-secondary. It could be 2-year, it could be 4-year, it could be a certificate, it could be barber. I mean, something post-secondary training. STEM jobs in the Chicago area. When we see the dark blue, it represents a social degree or lower, but when we look at the light blue, a bachelor's or higher. Now let's look at that. Healthcare. A lot of blue there, right? Various jobs. But as we move across the screen and we look at computers, we have less dark blue. And when we look at post-secondary and sales, we have no blue. It requires more education. The reason why I pointed this out, because it's like a cliche. Everywhere we go, people are talking about STEM jobs. In 2025, you're going to have this, you're going to have that. Guess what? It's valid. Just in our area, the green represents how many jobs are created in 2009, and the blue represents bachelor's, master's, or PhD that were awarded in 2009. As you can see, whoa, I got, maybe not all of it, but can I move this back? case. All right. I graduated in sociology, psychology, social sciences, but we can see that there's a lot of blue here, but very few jobs. Very few jobs. But a lot of what? A lot of student debt, student loans, right? A lot of student debt in social services. But when we look at computer science and math, there are more jobs than we have students able to take those jobs. Okay? Not in the, right here. Right? Education reduces poverty. Education reduces poverty. And here it is in the red. By 2020, 2/3 of the jobs, 66%, requires a bachelor's or some form of education beyond high school. Brutal facts. Not just in the Latino community, not just in the African American community, but the American labor market and economy. Everybody suffers. So it's our job to make sure that we're doing what's best for students. We just can't say, oh, well, Daquan didn't pass, or Manuel, they just want. We have to go beyond. You can't say, well, hey, I tried, right? We can't leave it up to 15-year-olds to make decisions about their life. As 40-year-olds and 35-year-olds, we know the importance of education, so there's no such thing as 50-50. Shame on us when we say 50-50. It should be more like 90-10, 80-20. But 50-50, they don't know yet, right? But we do. So we want to make sure that we're doing our very best to educate our students. This moves me to Thomas Friedman, American journalist. The earth is flat. He makes the case that we're no longer competing with students just in our class of 1988 or 89 or 2015, 16, 17, but the globe. My wife works at IBM. She doesn't even have to put on any, change out of her pajamas, and she just stay there and work with people in Japan, in Dallas, just right from the house. The earth, is flat. My ADHD comes out from time to time. It's a valid statement, right? Whoa. I don't know what happened here, but I'll take it. The earth is flat. I put this in here because it shows that back then, during the Columbus era and before, they thought that if you sail too far, that you eventually fall off the face of the earth. And I'm going to make this case why the earth is flat. And how. What are the flatteners? How do we become flat? Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. All right, let's look at this. Globalization 1. What happened? Globalization 1 was from the 1400s to the 1800s. Columbus was inspired by Marco Polo, Ferdinand Magellan, Vasco da Gama, and the key agent of change in the first globalization was muscle, horsepower, steam engines, wind, and the primary question people was, what can my country, how can my country benefit on the global stage? It was much broader. How can my country? So Columbus was selling for, though he was Italian, he was selling for Spain, right? How can my country compete with other countries? They were looking for passageways to collaborate with other countries or possible countries that they were unaware of, right? They were looking for water routes. But look at globalization 2, from the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution, to 2000. We had breakthroughs in hardware, we had IBM come up with technology, Netscape, Windows 95, all kinds of things started to happen, right? Did I say that right? Right. All right, and here the question is, where does my company? So it has moved from the country to company, right? And now it is much smaller. How can we establish McDonald's over in Japan, in China? How can my company? So These are flatteners, right? And the third one, where we are today, 2000 to present, connectivity, uploading, insourcing, offshoring, outsourcing, right? People, you don't need your country now. You don't need a company. You can just sell stuff on Facebook. You can upload things on YouTube and become famous and make thousands, if not millions of dollars. The world is flat. And what does that mean for us as educators when we're talking about our vision and mission statements, or proviso, provision and mission statement, to compete on a global platform? Do we get this? Right? Next slide. I explained that. Next slide. Globalization 2 was interrupted by the Great Depression, World War I and World War II. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, I talked about the first half of it, steam engines and muscle. Next slide, please. Okay, telegraphs came about in the second half of the era. PC, satellites. Next slide. The second bullet point. More driven not only by individuals, but also by a much more diverse, non-Western, non-white group. Right? Everybody is benefiting from globalization 3, right? Everyone. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. How? Next slide. 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. What were you doing in 1989? She said grade school, right? But with the fall, and I think maybe Ronald Reagan, but with the fall of the Berlin Wall, things started to happen. Next slide. Look, Cold War, Apple II, Steve Jobs, IBM, Windows 1985, Windows 3.0 shipped May 22nd, 6 months after the wall went down. The earth is flat. These are flatteners. Next slide. Do you remember these things happen? Look at this. As a result of all this productivity, we need fax machines, we need the PCs and modems, right? The earth is flat. Next slide. Where were you? I remember my math colleagues talking about the World Wide Web. I had no idea what they were talking about. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. All right. So the purpose of me showing this, I was trying to provide evidence as to why and how the earth became flat, and what does that mean for us as educators. PISA. PISA. See how I led up to that? See how I made that case? Evidence? PISA. International assessments. Let's look at it. To perform on a global stage. It sounds good. But when it's time for us to do some action, we fold. We don't stay the course. This part is not going to be as motivational. But there will be facts. This entire presentation filled with facts. Because in many cases, if we do not, it is a matter of life and death for some of our students. And for some of us. We talk about the smugger years and how it used to be. We must do a better job. I am going to show PISA. It talks about how we stack up against other countries, how we stack up against in other industrialized nations. PISA. Have we heard of it? The international? Yes. Look at that very last sentence. I have an 8-minute video that I'm not going to show you, but it says it measures problem solving and cognition in the daily life. The president of PISA said that the reason why American students do not, because others have difficulties with this, is because we Google everything. know it, they found the answer. There's a difference. We found the answer. And when we talk about effect size, we will see that computers, Mike Fullen, Linda Darling-Hammond, Mark Zano, just not giving us the fame. We have inconsistency as it relates to closing the gap or helping students learn despite their readiness level. It's just not. But we do know that salesmen are making a lot of money. We do know that Dell and Apple are making a lot of money. I am not knocking it, right? But it is not the silver bullet, is the point that I'm trying to make. It is not. It's going to be amazed at what is, right? So this is what PISA measures. Countries. It's not just one. It's given every 3 years. The most recent one was given in 2015. The red represents the United States in math. And we do know that math is the #1 predictor of college readiness, according to ACT, according to David Conley, SAT. Here we are in reading, and here we are in science. And this time, on the most recent PISA test, we had some underdeveloped countries, or however you want to say it, that performed better than we did. We're spending thousands of dollars, and we still are not getting the outcomes that we desire, that we need. Let me put it right here. Yeah. Look at this. And turn to your neighbor and talk about it. Look at the blue line. Look at the year it started. Who was that? Lyndon B. Johnson? Nixon? Comments? But what has risen? From 57,000 to 164,000 to educated kids from K through 12. What about the goal line? The second line, the second highest line. Number of employees. But the most important lines, no change. No change. I'm not pointing this out to be yucky. I'm not pointing this out to be mean. I'm pointing this out because these are the facts. We can't continue to sweep this under the carpet. This is on us. We can't blame mom and dad for everything, but thinking of effect size, parent involvement is a 0.55. It matters. But we can't always control parents. But we should be able to control teaching and learning and the strategies that we're implementing for the purpose of educating our students. We can't control that. Math, STEM jobs, PISA, you just saw it. We say Algebra 1 is the gateway to college, but it's not enough. Geometry is not enough. The minimum math is Algebra 2. They would like for you to take pre-calc, to be honest, but Algebra 2. But look at the role of Algebra 2. Graduating from college, the only time it doesn't matter is job advancement. Why do you think? Doesn't matter, right? You finish, right? It's over with. You just have to have good interviewing skills, right? Or know how to play the game. Finding a job. It matters. Algebra 2. But guess what? Guess what we like to say? Guess what we like to brag on? No one brags on the fact that they can read. No one. But everyone thinks I could just run a parent-teacher conference. Oh, I'm not good at math. My kid come home with this. Teachers say it. Principals say it. We have to stop. about that, you don't even know what street you're on. You can't navigate in a new city. You can't read the green signs. He couldn't even read his medication. Education is necessary, right? I want you to take some time, 2 or 3 minutes, to read these. Now moving to, in my closing, what works best in order to give us the outcomes that we need. What exactly is learning? Now turn and talk to your neighbors and answer those questions. 2 minutes. Go ahead. Make all the noise you want. Let's go. How did you learn it? John Coltrane. I just knew I was going to be hours and hours. Matter of fact, I was teaching at Southern University in psychology, and I said, no, I'm going to learn how to play the saxophone, right? And at 23, I got my first gig at 23 teaching psychology. So my mom and dad said, dude, that was some curse words, but I don't know who's here. We put you through college, and you're out here in July playing jingle bells. Go tell Aunt Rhodey. What is wrong with you? It's the truth. Master's, psych, no, Southern University. I'm going to do something new, right? And I bought a saxophone. Still got the ticket, $247 from a pawn shop, right? And I practiced for hours and hours, and my favorite things and all the things, Miles Davis. I just knew I wasn't going to teach anymore. Right? Then all of a sudden, I was laid off. And I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Racine, Wisconsin. Not quite, but, and I connected with the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music and my teacher, Berkeley Fudge, and I studied with Berkeley for like 5 years. I recorded in 1999, but the point that I'm making is I had to do it myself. I listened to albums, I would stop them. I'm just making the case of how we learn, right? I practiced for hours. I had my saxophone in my Volvo all the time, right? Because I wanted. I was around people that knew more than me. I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to watch videos, Dexter Gordon, Charlie Parker, Sarah Vaughan. I looked at over and over and over because that's what I wanted, right? I didn't quite get there, but a member of a band, a leader of a band. And I had to embrace I was chosen for education. But I brought my saxophone if you want me to play. No. All right. I did. Right. All right. Here they are. It's no silver bullet. Raise your hand if you know Madeline Hunter. Doug Fisher. Nancy Fry. Stole it. Right. Bogowski. This, people. We already know these work, but we are good to great. We are constantly, everybody who knocks on our door and tell us that this worked, and we haven't even vetted it, but we just accept it. This is why the veteran teachers say, if I just hang in there, this too will pass. That's why they say it. Because we are always looking for something else, when in reality, kids don't learn different. Quit saying that. Humans learn the same. We may have new devices, but kids need to know where they're going. Learning targets. What's the focus today? Could you imagine jumping in your mom, dad, 1976 station wagon, going to Wally World, and they don't tell you anything? Could you imagine when we talk about feedback, 82 games in basketball, but the coach doesn't give you feedback until the 61st game? We must chunk the lesson. We must give habitual feedback. We must give direct instruction and allow students to collaborate. People, this isn't new, but guess what? Very, 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 very high effect size. Not cell phones, not computers. I think it was like 0.31. Everything we do impacts teaching and learning. My grandmother taught me how to read. Everything we do impacts teaching and learning. But the question is, which one matters the most? As I move forward and run out of time. Hattie, which ones matter the most? I just showed them to you. 80 million students, year after year. In 2009, there were 800 meta-analysis. 2016, it had risen to 1,200. And guess what? Nothing has changed. You must check for understanding. You must give feedback. You must progress monitor. You have to do these things. Stop looking for silver bullets. And it'll help with math. What works best in instruction? The minimum effect size is 0.4. What is an effect size? Just check out the red. To move beyond simplicity. Interventions, strategies. For these reasons, effect size is an important tool in reporting and interpreting effectiveness. Because because we have students that are competing with other students around the world. We have to do what works best. We know that everything we do works, but what works best over a period of 9 months? So from red to green. The green, 0.4 to 1.2, but it goes higher than that, right? Most of this is teacher. 98% teacher. Not mom that didn't come to the parent conference. Not dad. Not because Daquan has ADHD, right? Matter of fact, I'm glad I have it. All right, until I have to go home and get my cell phone 5-6 times a week. All right, because I've forgotten it. Here we go. A 1.0 effect size or higher, the kid or the student has the potential of gaining 3 years worth of growth. But a 0.4, right? We want a student after a year of schooling to have gained at least 1 year of schooling. That's 0.4. The negative or the red is mom and dad beating the hell out of you because you got an F. The negative is retention, holding a student back. They watch too much TV was 0.12. But those are the things that we like to use to justify. But they are not high. Not I think, not I feel, but according to the research. Over 1,200 meta-analysis, 80 million students. Despite the number of years, year after year, same thing matters. Learning targets, checking for understanding, teacher credibility. RTI. Why do you think RTI, response to intervention, work when it's done right? Because we meet students where they are. Teacher credibility. It's like a 0.9 or higher. Can't remember exactly, but what exactly is it? What is teacher credibility? Why is it important? Can a teacher use it? Look at that red. Our kids know. They know when we stunt. They know, right? Trust. Teacher credibility. Can't stand up there and make all kinds of mistakes. It's okay to say I don't know it, but make sure you come back and say, hey, I found that. I have the answer. What works best? Here we are. Everything we do, working smarter based on the effect side makes a profound difference. Effect size. Look at those. No laptop up there, is it? Any surprises? Are we doing these things? Are we talking about these things in our professional learning communities? Are we looking at data? Are we in our professional learning communities talking about how soft the bread is at Panera's and our dogs and our families when we should be looking at the data for the purpose of going back to our classroom and adjusting our instructions? I put some negatives up here so you can see. Retention is at the very bottom. A negative 0.15. Computer-assisted instructions. Which one of these, in closing, I understand, which one of these have the biggest impact or the greater impact on teaching and learning? think it's transformational? Raise your hand. Don't be afraid. If it's transformational, it has the biggest impact on student achievement, raise your hand if you agree that transformational. Okay? If you believe that it's instructional, raise your hand. It's instructional. The human is the most important. Let's put these in order. Talk to your friend. Talk to your neighbor. Put these in order from effect size highest to lowest. Look at these. What do you think? Which one of these matter the most? Here we go. How many you got all 5 right? Or 6, whatever? Put these in order. We all know E, right? What about that homework? Why do you think homework? Why do you think homework is a point 29? What? Thoughtless? I heard somebody said they can Google it. Relevancy? You don't know if Big Mama is actually doing the homework? You know? But what do we do when it's not complete? We give them zeros. A -6. That's what a 0 is when you're looking at the scale. It's 59, 50, 40, 49, 30, 39, 20, 29, 0. But all the other ones only have 10 points. 90 to 100, 80 to 89. But 0! -6. How many A's to recover from a 0? Negative. Right? And in closing, Dr. Rodriguez said success is intentional. These strategies that we use should be intentional because they work best. Thank you. You have been great.